Oh man. The whole point is to share it on here.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. Embarrass the shit out of yourself.
Keep the conversation, as random as possible.
And you're doing a fine job on your end.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Stardom right here in JG's Lounge. I'm your host, Jukebox, and we're back with another episode. And with me today, we've got a very special guest, and I'm actually very appreciative of the fact that you wanted to come on today. Richard-Lael Lillard, how you doing?
I am fine, thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, you are correct in saying the name. My first name is Richard-Lael. It's not Richard. If I were just Richard, I'd be a
dick. And you are far from that. We've been talking about, as far as getting the show lined up for a couple weeks now, and you've been extremely polite, and we've even had to reschedule a couple times, and it's been very nice, very friendly, and I appreciate you. So thank you for getting up this early too.
My pleasure.
So tell everybody, because a lot of my fans aren't gonna know, or my following isn't gonna know much about who you are. So go ahead and kind of give a brief summary of who you are.
Well, I am most well known for appearances on Ghost Adventures. I was on several other paranormal shows. I am I'm a Satanist, but I don't belong to the Satanic Temple. I do not belong to the Church of Satan. I am independent and solo, much like the devil himself. I am an artist. I have been an actor. I was the MC for America's Next Top Model, cycle 20, I think, episode 1. I've done a lot. I was a celebrity impersonator. I played Freddie Mercury and Johnny Depp characters and Tim Curry, and I have entertained celebrities and heads of state, and I have traveled extensively, and I paint, and I'm known as the gentleman psychic. It's a lot.
That is a lot. But that's interesting though. I mean, it's good to have to have like multiple talents, as you would say. I mean, I don't know if talents is the right word for it, but I mean,
I think so. Though honestly, the only thing I would really like to do is just stay in my dark home. That's what
it's funny. When I research, because when I have guests that I find on social media that have like certain aspects that I'm really interested in, like the satanic. When I saw your Jubilee interview, it wasn't the fact that you said, "Oh, I'm a Satanist." It was more of like your perception of your belief on why you're not other things. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense.
I think so.
You mentioned, like, I can't, I wouldn't follow a God who would condemn people for the simple fact of not believing in them. And I believe that 100%,
Well, and you know what? My mother passed away in November, and she was my very dearest friend on the planet. I talked to her every single day. She was 83. She was my very best friend. And there was a time before 2016, and I'm not going to go into as to why 2016, but I'm sure you know. There was a time that I could talk to my mother about anything. And then a certain person came down a gold escalator and scared her. And she thought that the world was going to end and that people were going to take her Social Security. And that, it was just one thing after another. But prior to that, I remember my mother, as she'd gone through a bout of cancer around that time. And she got scared, and she said to me one day, she says, I just have this invasive thought that what if I close my eyes in death and I open them, and then I find that all of this time I've been worshiping the wrong God? What if I go to hell in another religion? And I said to her, Mother, number one, you will never go to hell. I don't believe in it, but I don't think you would ever, 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 ever go to hell. You are a person who has been so kind and giving and loving and bringing people into your home that needed a place to stay. And you have given of your own food and your own shelter and your own time. You have never harmed a single person in your life, not on purpose, at least. And if any God would send you to hell, then that God is not a God that I would want to worship.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the worst part about that is the fact that somebody who is probably very involved in the church their whole life ends with that thought in their mind.
Yeah.
That's scary. It is. And it's the fact that somebody lives with that on the back of their mind.
Yeah.
So
it's very
go ahead.
But she was my very best friend, and she was a very good person. She was a loving person. And what may or may not surprise your audience, whatever. When I came out as gay, I thought, well, she's religious and I will not see my mother again. She'd found it was MySpace in those days. She'd found my MySpace. She said, I found your MySpace. And I went, oh, you did? And she goes, yes. And tell me it's not true. I said, Mother, you know it's true. You know that it is. She says, well, I love everything about you. I love the way that you move and the way that you talk and the way that you have decorated my home and the way that you can do my hair and tell me what looks good. And you do musical theater and you do interior design. I went, Mother, those things are true, partially because the other thing is true. And she said, well, I'll never discuss it again. And I love you. And I love you very much. Well, she did discuss it again, but that was because as she was getting older, she said one day, she said, well, I'm just worried sick about you. And you know that thing that you think you are. And I said, a Satanist? She said, no, not that. You don't even believe in the devil, the other thing. And I went, you mean gay? If that's what you want to call it. If that's what you want to call it. I said, Mother, yes, that's what it is. That's
what it is. Yeah. No, there's nothing wrong with you being who you are. It's funny, we both come from a Pentecostal background, right? And when my cousin turned 18 and came out as being lesbian, my grandma and her mom locked her in a room for 2 weeks and told her she couldn't be. And then eventually when she, just said, no, I'm not changing who I am. They decided, okay, we're just going to keep jumping around churches until we find one that's okay with it. So then there was it was a nightmare. My childhood of the Christian church is just like this hypocritical, just very judgmental people that even the people they judge the people in their own church. And it's a nightmare.
Well, my grandmother, my mother's mother, okay, so there's Pentecostalism on both sides, and I have to kind of tell you.
Yeah.
So my father's mother and father, my father's parents, my grandmother was Lutheran, my grandfather was Baptist, and they couldn't decide on which church to go to, so they said, we'll just go to the one on the corner, which was a Pentecostal church, which in 1930 was a fairly new thing. I mean, 1909 is when the Azusa Street revivals happened in California, which launched the Pentecostal movement. So by 1930, 1932, and when my father was born and growing up, he attended church. And what scared him, his parents didn't ever really fully believe it because they, like I said, Lutheran and Baptist. And so what scared him was that there was an evangelist who came to visit my grandparents, and trusting as they were, they let this 3-year-old boy sleep in the same room with this strange minister. And my father would recall, he'd say, Oh, I remember Reverend Billy, whatever, and he would sleep in my bed, and he'd get down at night on his knees, and he'd pray, "Oh Lord, bless little Bill Dick. Oh Lord, don't let him burn in hell. Oh Lord, don't let his flesh burn in hell." And it scared my father to the point where, even in his own family, his sister was like, "That's crazy. That's crazy."
Yeah. Yeah.
But he sort of took it on, and it became his thing. But my mother's family, they lived in Atlanta for most of her adult life anyway. But her mother was a woman that she didn't know who her father was. My mother didn't know who her father was. She thought she had it down to 3 people. She found out later who it was through DNA, but
Right.
she didn't know from 1939 until like 15 years ago, 10 years ago. She didn't know who her father was.
Okay.
And her father, her stepfather, rather, was abusive in more than one ways. And I'm not going to say how, but you understand. He was abusive. So she ran away from home when she was 16. Long story short, my grandmother finds Jesus. And they attended a very segregated church. Now, this is in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
A very segregated church in Atlanta, Georgia. And people of color sat on one side and white people sat on the other side, and the two did not cross. And the pastor would get up and he would say, "Well, if it wasn't for me, you people would be out there at the creek drinking Coca-Cola, eating Wonder Bread."
Oh my God.
And catfish, I think he said was a thing. But these same people, they had no qualms about being inappropriate with their cousins. They had no qualms about these other things. But let me tell you, they were so holy. They were so righteous.
Right.
And I remember the story. My grandmother had a friend, woman of color, friends for 30 years. This woman was her friend for 30 years. And this woman would take my grandmother grocery shopping, and she would take her to her doctor appointments, and they would go to the same church, and they would sit on opposite sides. And that woman never came into my grandmother's house because, and I quote my late grandmother, "She knows her place." And yet, holy, 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 with their high collars and their long sleeves and their shamefaced and their big hair and their shambaladi hasi lodi bullshit.
Oh my God. See, and that's the other thing. Like, so the church I went to, we went to church 4 days a week. A lot of the things I learned in school were restricted. And my stepdad would go and he would play roles as Jesus on stage at church, and then he'd come home, he would beat me, snort coke, do drugs. He was a big alcoholic, and then he molested my sister too. This was for years. And and I say funny now, but it was disturbing coming out of that, because I thought that was the way everybody was for years. So when I got out of that and realized, okay, there's so much more, it actually really frustrated me with my family, because I was so hidden from the fact that that's not the way the world is. So how did you did you research like Satanism, or did it just kind of happen?
It's fine. It's funny because I was a Sunday school teacher. I sang in the choir. I was trying so hard because I was scared to death. I was about 9, and my brother-in-law, who was a Pentecostal preacher, my late brother-in-law, it would have been the month of June, Pride Month, because he got up to preach about a sermon about the sin of pride. And he was talking about how that he heard this story of this man who was Pentecostal, and then he decided that he was going to be a homosexual. And then because of that, the Lord turned his back, and that man became a Satanist. And then he died of AIDS, and it was justice.
Oh, wonderful. Great way to end the story.
And I remember I went, whoa, and I was terrified. But I remember all of these talks about the devil being the most beautiful angel. And I remember I went, well, why is it a bad thing? That's kind of amazing. Yeah. And then as I wanted to be a Christian. I wanted there to be goodness and purity. And then I read, I was studying to become a minister.
Yeah.
And I read the Bible. Cover to cover, I read that Bible. And I realized the devil, though fictional, is much less the bad guy than the alleged good guy who massacres millions of people on a whim. He floods the earth and drowns them on a whim. He tells his followers, you're my special people. Now go over here and murder every man, woman, and child, excepting for the young virgin girls. Do with them what you will. Right. Well, what do you think that means? After you've murdered her mother and father and her sister, her married sister, and her aunts and her cousins and all of her family, you're going to take this young virgin girl for your purpose? Or what about when Yahweh says to, let me see what else does he say here? He says, oh, if your wife protects you in a battle, cut her hand off. Yeah, real good, God, real good.
Real good. Yeah.
But it goes on. It talks about even human sacrifice. You talk about Abraham and Isaac. God knew his limit. God, if God is all knowing, knew that Abraham would do it. He didn't have to test him. He would know that already.
Right.
But he says, go kill your child for me. And then you think about Isaac is on that altar, and his own father has tied him up and raised the knife to murder him. And it's supposed to be, it's a symbol of like God sending his own son and what God had to go through. No, it's sick. And in the Bible, the devil the father of lies does not tell one single lie.
And as many churches as I jumped around, and the different interpretations of the same verses is mind-boggling too.
It is. And here's the deal. If God is all-knowing and God is all-powerful and God is all-loving, then you wouldn't need a book that can be mistranslated and mistranslated and mistranslated. And what you have even still is that you have a 2,000, 3,000-year-old game of telephone, of gossip. There are things that one can say. For instance, when I was a celebrity impersonator, one of the characters I played was Willy Wonka. And I would tell people, hello, how are you? I don't care. Before they could answer, hello, how are you? I don't care. And it's funny because then it's one continuous thing. They go, okay, then why did you ask? Because it's funny. That's why. Yeah. But in Espanol, I would say, ¿Cómo estás? No me importa. Which is to say, hello, how are you? How are you? I don't care. But it's really more along the lines of, how are you? I don't give a shit. So it's not, yes, it kind of means hello, how are you? I don't care. But that's not what it means. It's much more like a punch. And it's funny. People would laugh because then they go, oh, okay, that's funny. Now, of course, it became funny because there was no pause.
Right.
How are you? I don't care. If I would have paused, then it would have been rude.
Okay, yeah.
But the point is that even though no me importa and I don't care are kind of the same thing, it doesn't mean the same thing.
Right.
And so you have stories that were written down hundreds of years after the alleged events. I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
Right.
Hundreds of years after the alleged events. And then, of course, they've been told and retold and retold and retold and retold and retold. And, when my father, I'm sorry to ramble.
No, but that's what the show's about.
When my father passed away, he died on my 25th birthday. And I delivered his eulogy. And I told his story. I said, those of you who knew my father knew that he carried this crooked stick, but what you may not know is how he got that stick. And this is the story as related to me by my father.
Mm.
My father was wandering through a deep, dark forest, darker and thicker than it has ever been. And there on a clearing was a giant yellow cat. And he knew that he could make this cat his friend. So he jumped right up on that back of that cat. And that cat ripped and snorted, and it shook the ground, and the trees moved and fell at its feet. And the earth moved beneath this giant cat. And when that cat had calmed down, my father jumped off, and there at his feet was that crooked stick. And that crooked stick, he counted the rings, and it was planted the day he was born.
Oh, wow.
And that magic stick, it wasn't just a stick, it was a magic stick. It was a stick that spoke to him, that told about God and about love and about Jesus. And he carried that stick with him every single day.
Mm.
But the truth is, that deep, dark forest was nothing but the thicket at the end of his 40 acres. That big yellow cat was a caterpillar front-end loader. That crooked stick was just a crooked stick. And yes, he could manipulate it to make it to spell out words, but it was just a crooked stick.
Right. And
yet, who am I to stand before you and take 1 ounce of magic from this man who touched so many lives? And to quote the film that made me understand how much I loved him, he became what he always was, a big fish.
Fantastic movie.
It was, and truly, that was what made me realize I loved my father. But the point is, if you were to listen to the story that my father told and then had no context and were to believe that story, it would be incredibly fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And so if my grandfather told me a story about aliens coming down, I might believe him. I might.
Right.
Because he was my grandfather.
Yeah.
But your grandfather tells a story of aliens coming down and that they took him up into this spaceship with eyes all over it and the sound of 1,000 horses. You might go, right. But now it's your great.
Yeah, it's been told so many times. Who knows how distorted it really is? And yeah, there's no fact behind it, really. That's the same thing with religion. I mean, and how many times has the Bible been translated too? I mean,
over and over and edited for political purposes and edited and edited and edited and edited.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Christianity and politics just hand in hand.
Well, it does. It was Constantine who realized the power of using Christianity for political gain.
Mm-hmm.
Constantine, of course, was the founder of the Catholic Church, the Holy Roman Catholic Church, coming out of the Holy Roman Empire, which was a completely separate thing, but somehow connected. Mm-hmm. Constantine had a vision of the sign of the cross, which is actually an ankh. It was later revealed, but he said, in this sign conquer. And so he using the power of the cross and sort of melding together the pagan Romans with this budding group of Christians melded together and conquered because they thought, oh, he's on our side. He's on our side.
Right.
And it's happened time and time again with every dictator, every political. It happens over and over,
Yes,
and over,
yes.
and over and over.
Yes. I found like this little spoof clip that about like Satan that I thought was pretty funny, and I want to share it if you're okay with it. It's very funny, and it actually there's a reasoning behind it, but we'll talk about it after I share it here.
We heard, "I am the devil."
What kind of voice did the devil have?
Oh man, it's a little glitchy.
A very low voice, I'd say, sounded like Eli Wallach.
Have you saved any of this satanic toast?
Yes, I did save it because I wanted to be sure that somebody else would see it. Now this one, can you see that, Richard? Satan lives. Just terrible.
Is the toaster still possessed?
We still have trouble off and on with it, yes. Oh, see, now it's...
I just hold it down.
It seems to be aware.
Why have you kept this toaster?
Well, Richard, you know, when all is said and done, it makes good toast.
It's good, right? It's good.
It's hilarious. I mean, if Jesus could appear on toast instead of feeding children or stopping rape from happening, then Satan can appear on toast. Why not?
Right. But simply, the fact, it makes good toast. It comes to show like it's about the people, though, man. It's who you are as a person. It doesn't matter what your background is. It's or what you believe in. If you are a good person, that's what matters.
Well, I think it is important. Also, where I'm not with the Satanic Temple. I'm not with the Church of Satan. I am independent of both. However, there are elements of both that I do agree with. And if you look up the 7 tenets of Satanism in the Satanic Temple and the 11 rules of earth, I would challenge anyone to find anything that they disapprove of.
Yeah, and I've looked at them. It's really just how you should live your life. There's nothing that sticks out that's any different from what you do on a day-to-day basis or how you should think.
Exactly. It talks about, well, you can go look them up, but it's just be a good person. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, it's what it comes down to. And it seems like the most, have you heard of the Westboro Baptist? I'm sure you've heard of Westboro Baptist Church.
I live with them. Yes.
Oh, I'm sure you have. I live 25 minutes away from them. They're always out here doing stuff. And the fact that people can be that way, it really frustrates me that people like that exist. And I hate to be frustrated because I'm a good person.
I have a thought about the Westboro Baptist. People will say, oh, those aren't real Christians. Those aren't true Christians. But the truth is, they are true Christians. According to the edicts in the Bible says that you have to love Jesus and follow his commandments. That's it. You have to confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. That's it. Also, when you literally take the Bible verse by verse, it is a book that talks about raping people. It talks about beheading people. It talks about scapegoating, literally scapegoating. It talks about murdering someone who doesn't give enough money to the church. It talks about murdering people who work on the Sabbath. It talks about murdering people who don't believe like you. So yes, the Westboro Baptists are absolutely 100% Christians if they believe that Jesus is their Lord and Savior. Yes, absolutely they are. And the problem is that these people say, oh, well, they're not real. But then they excuse all of the other, oh, you're taking it out of context. Oh, well, that's not the Jesus that I love. God is love. Okay, there's one verse that says God is love. One verse. The rest of it doesn't exist. It doesn't, everything that you see, Jesus is even Jesus who burns people in hell. The concept of hell didn't even exist until Jesus came on the scene.
Right. Which, like you said, like I don't believe in hell either. I mean, the
No.
idea of hell being an eternal damnation and misery, like you have to have a physical like brain or something to process those emotions. Like
Right.
you can't. How are you supposed to process it in an afterlife? You can't process those feelings.
You can't. And not only that, where does punishment has means to an end? If a parent loves their child and they say, go to your room.
Mhm.
If you were to say, go to your room forever, then the child may have understood what was wrong at one point, but it reaches a point where that child is in its room forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and can't come out. And you go, okay, why does the punishment fit the crime? You had one extra cookie. Does the punishment fit the crime? And no matter how evil someone is, there has to come a point where the torture has to stop.
Right.
Morally.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just becomes torture porn.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Even as evil as Hitler was, without a doubt, unless you're conservative Christian and you have, that's a whole other thing that's come about these days. As evil as Hitler was, there has to come a point where the torture does not fit the crime.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, and that's they say that literally like looking at somebody with attraction is like a sin, and then murdering somebody's a sin. Like, how are those like, how is that the same? There's not even
Well, one of the back on my mother, I will tell you this. So I have a brother that was arrested and released for sexual assault.
Mhm.
It was from he's my half brother. There was mental illness because he was abused by his father. Not my father. My father was eccentric, but that was not my father.
Yeah.
But my mother said one day, she said, honey, of all of my children, I'm concerned about you and this other one the most. And I said, how dare you? How dare you? I said, what I do is with consenting adults. How dare you? How dare you? She said, well, sexual sin is sexual sin. I said, you know what, for your information, this one has had affair after affair after affair and has 10 children from 4 women that we know of.
Right.
Well, he repented. And I said, and this one,
wow,
and this one over here is a lesbian. Well, no, she's not, because Jesus has saved her and she says that she won't do that. And I said, and this one over here, this one has had an affair after affair and has been caught having an affair with a woman and his best friend. She said, well, yes, I guess you're right about that one. I do worry about that too. And I said, Mother, what I do is with consenting adults. I have never once forced myself on anybody. I will not force myself on anybody. And I will not be with anyone who is not of legal age and consent. I will not do that. That is not who I am. How dare you? And she said, yeah, you're right. I apologize. I shouldn't have said that. And I said, you're right. You shouldn't have said that.
I'm surprised. The fact that she apologizes, that's good.
Well, like I said, my mother she was concerned because she was raised very religious. She said, well, all of my life I've been raised to think that being a homosexual was wrong. And I said, but Mother, why? Why? Yeah. The Bible talks about, she says, well, the Bible says that it's a sin. And I said, yes, Leviticus 18:22 says, if a man lies with a man like he lies with a woman, then they both should be put to death and the blood is upon their heads. But let me tell you something. A man cannot lie with another man the way that he would lie with a woman. It's impossible unless there's a front unless there's a vagina.
Right.
Otherwise, it doesn't. It's impossible. You
Yeah.
literally, it's impossible.
Yeah.
And I said, and furthermore, I said, the Bible says to not have mixed fibers and to not round the corners of your beard, and it calls eating shrimp an abomination, and touching pork is an abomination, and working on the Sabbath is an abomination, and believing other things is an abomination. What's the difference?
I mean, you really can't win. Unless you want to go, follow the Westboro Baptist Church, then, So I kind of want to change direction here, especially because as we talk about, being gay or straight, when it all boils down to, we're energies.
Sure.
And in my opinion, energies don't have a sex or gender.
Well, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It only changes form. Right. Most of our, whether it has memory or not, they say that it has every molecule of water has 1/1,000,000th of a millisecond worth of memory.
Right.
I'm not a scientist. I don't care.
Right.
But I do say that there is the same blood that is in your system. It is the blood of dinosaurs, because it's changed form. The energy's changed form. It's just existed. Is there reincarnation? Possibly. Frankly, I don't care.
Really? Yeah. I don't know. I like the concept of it, but
yeah, no, I like the concept. I have memories of things that existed before.
Right.
But truthfully, even if it does exist, the only life that matters is this one.
Yeah, the one you're living right now. Yeah.
And it's not, that's why I wouldn't want to go to heaven, because it negates all of the connections and the emotions and the humanity that is in the life that is for certain, that is this one one right here.
So when it comes to like you do seances and tarot readings, and when you make contact with energies or spirits, what do you think it is that happens to us once we pass on, or what do you think it is that we reach out to?
What happens when we die is that we die, and our body stops functioning, and then it deteriorates, and then that water that was our body evaporates and goes into the heavens. It gets purified. It becomes rain. That's sort of the sort of point of it. However, it was the theory of relativity. Albert Einstein, his friend, had passed away. And this is where he came up with the theory of relativity, because he told his friend's widow, he said, "My friend, your husband, has died. But it doesn't mean that he's not here. He's just on the other side of the hill where we can't see him." And so what I feel is that when I do seances, when I have had spirit communication, oftentimes, time is not linear. It's not linear. It's not point A, point B. It's much more complicated than that. So I believe that one can communicate through time. It's a weird thing, and a lot of the atheist community frowns at me for it, because they say, well, if you don't believe in God, how can you believe in that? Well, because I've seen it happen, and I do believe in it. I do believe that one can communicate. And oftentimes I say, well, I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm connecting with that person or if I'm connecting with this energy. I don't know what it is, but I say what I see.
Right.
I don't know what it is.
Right. Now, have you helped people in the sense that they believe that you've contacted their loved ones? All the time. When I do seances, again, I get images, pictures, words, sounds. Sometimes I take on the physicality of someone else. I don't know where it comes from, but everyone who has come has gone, yes, I feel better. I feel a certain sense of closure.
And oftentimes I'll see things that I can't explain. I'll say, for instance, your father, he had a mole on his left shoulder, and he had a little dog named Buddy, whatever it may be. And they go, yep, that's my father. And in fact, there was a seance I did in Pasadena, and this fella comes to me, and he was curious about the death of his uncle. And I said, okay. And I said, he's a good looking guy, but he keeps covering his mouth, and he speaks in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but he slaps my back and he goes, macho, 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 macho. And he goes, yeah, that was my uncle. And he had bad teeth, and he was always concerned about his teeth.
Right.
He would cover his mouth. So how does it happen? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, at least, at least you're realistic about these, rather than somebody who can say, no, I mean, I have full on conversations with these people. I mean, and they exist. They're right next to me, rather than somebody saying, I don't know what it is, but this is what I see,
Well, I think that if I were to say, I know one thing or another, all right, if I were to do that, then I would do a disservice to the people that are in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
I would do a disservice to myself, and I would do a disservice to my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my goal is, I don't wish to convert anyone to anything. I don't actually care one way or another what people believe or what they don't believe, and I don't actually care.
Right.
I work with staunch atheists who say, I don't know that he's psychic, but it was fun and he knew things.
Yeah.
I work with Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, Jews, Christians. I don't care. I don't care what anybody believes. It's not my business unless you make it my business.
Yeah. And if you're disrespectful, I just don't have any interest in talking to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, you say you do tarot readings too. So, I mean, when people come to you about tarot readings, is it more about sort of what path they should take, or is it because they're in situations that they need to work through?
It does vary. So the typically way when I start a tarot reading, I like to read. I have an antique deck of Lenormand oracle cards, and I love tarot, but then it becomes very sort of legalistic, and this card means this, and this combination means that, and it sort of blocks one off from what they may sense. So what I explain to people when they sit down, I say, cards are not magic. Cards are only tools that help us to tell a story. And I am not in your mind. In fact, I'm just looking through a very small keyhole, a very small window into your world. I get pictures, words, sounds. I don't know what they mean. I have no context. I'm not in your world. No matter how much it may seem like I'm in your head, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, life is a little like watching Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. When you are on the street in Manhattan, it's, where's my phone? What street am I on? Where's my friend? Is there a Starbucks? I need to go to the bathroom. Ooh, that was loud. Oh, I should take a picture. Let's take a selfie. It's this constant dialogue that it makes it difficult to see the parade. And in fact, when you're on the street, you have a very limited view. You can see that marching band. You can see the end of that balloon. You can see the beginning of that float. You can kind of see a little bit, but you don't know where it goes. You don't know where it's coming.
Right.
But if you take a deep breath, and you find yourself in a helicopter high above Manhattan, from this perspective, you can see the probable parade route. And I say probable because we are in the same time. All that I'm doing is facilitating you to take a moment to pause and to see your path ahead. However, in that same time, we deal only with the probabilities. The parade route looks like it's going to continue in this direction. However, could a marching band turn left instead of right? Yes, absolutely they could. Will that happen? Probably not.
Right.
Could the Barney balloon be punctured and removed from the parade route like it was in the 1990s? Yes. It's not likely. It could happen, and it has happened.
Mhm.
So when I deal with cards, I'm not in your world. I am not in your life. I don't know the context. Trust your intuition before you trust mine.
Mhm.
I'm not in your world. If I say anything, but the card means something more to you, trust yourself before you trust mine. I am not in your world.
Mhm.
And then I lay out the cards and I say, this means this means that. This is what I see. This is what's on your mind. This is what's outside of your control. Does that make sense to you? Most of the time, and not every time, but most of the time, people go, yes, I know exactly what that means. And I say, now, is there something that you would like to know? Is there a burning question that you have? And oftentimes they say, no, that actually answered everything. Other times they'll go, yes, actually, I want to know about this. And I'll say, well, from my perspective, this is what I see.
Right.
If you continue this path, this is what's going to happen. Now, there are times that I can be very incredibly accurate, especially if there's a connection.
Mhm.
I always like to start by saying what I see in my head. And back in New York, I had a client. She came and she sat down and we did our breathing techniques. And I said, oh, it's really funny because I keep seeing the Star Trek logo and I hear to boldly go, but it doesn't finish it. It just
Mhm.
says to boldly go, to boldly go, to boldly go, and not to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Right.
And she went, huh, okay. So we get into the cards and I said, it looks like there's a man who's coming back into your world that has not, he's been gone for a while, but he's coming back. And she burst out in laughter and she said, okay. She said, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, huge. And there's this fellow that I was dating in New York who we were here together and then he moved. And so it was too much. We couldn't carry on a long distance relationship. And we're both Star Trek fans. And he's moving back to New York. And I was just talking to him about Star Trek today.
Huh. That's interesting.
So how do I know? I don't know.
Mhm.
I have no context. I don't know. I just say what I see. I get images, pictures, words, sounds. Another person told me just yesterday, the day before yesterday. I said, I see dragonflies. And I was trying to think, what do dragonflies mean? I mean, magically, maybe it's because of transformation. Maybe it's because alchemy. I don't know what it means. And she says, no, I know what it means. And so I give the reading. She said, would you like to know what it means? And I said, if you're comfortable. She said to me, her grandfather had recently passed away within the last year. And before he died, they were all gathered watching some film about dragonflies. And he said to the wife, the grandmother, he said, when I go, I'm going to come back as a dragonfly and I'll land on your shoulder. And sure enough, after he passed away, a dragonfly came and landed on the grandmother's shoulder at the funeral.
All right.
And so as a result, all of them, the grandmother, the mother, the two daughters, the two granddaughters, as the case were, got dragonfly tattoos.
Oh, that's neat.
So I don't know how it happens. I don't know how it happens, but it does happen. Sometimes to my own detriment, because I sit down and I tell people all day long, this is the way things are going to go, and if this happens, this is going to happen.
Right.
But again, I'm only dealing with probabilities, and I don't oftentimes listen to myself. I was on Jubilee Media many times. They had one called Odd Man Out, where they had 5 real psychics and 1 fake, I think is what it was, or 4 and 1. No, 5 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the producer, I said to the producer, oh, that's easy. She's a young woman. She's about 23 years old. She's very pretty. She's mixed ethnic group. She has curly hair and she's got beautiful olive skin, and she will have Googled, how does a psychic dress? And she'll come in with mandalas and flowy things, and she'll be the fake.
Mm-hmm.
So sure enough, we're on the show, and in walks people that I don't know, and then people that I do know. And I went, okay, we're on the same side. And in walks this young woman exactly as I described, exactly to a T. But I thought I'll be the one that knows that it's her. So I made the mistake of watching several episodes, and they went 3 rounds. The ones that I had to watch went 3 rounds, and I was broke as a joke. I was so broke, and it was before I was waiting on. I had already done. I think I had done Ghost Adventures, but I was waiting for it to air or something like that.
Right.
So I was broke, and the place that I was working as an MC was shut down for renovations, and I was broke. So I thought, okay, I don't know what they're going to pay. I don't know what it is. I am going to do the show, and I want that money.
Right.
So we get in, and the first woman was just awful. She was so awful. Oh yeah, well, you're a fake. You're a fake. I know you. You're a vampire. I know you. I'm not a vampire. Anyway, so I went up and I saw that we had all voted her out. And I went, okay, everybody is on my side. We all know that Paris is the fake. Paris is repeating everything that everyone else is saying. Paris is the fake. Everyone knows that. Well, we go into round 2. And the woman from Orange County says to me, oh yeah, well, maybe you're the fake. You're wearing makeup. And I went, I'm on television. So I had thought that she went forward and voted against me, but she didn't. She actually voted for somebody else. And I went, how dare you? So I knew that she did Reiki. I knew that she did Reiki, which is not necessarily the same thing. But I thought, you know what? I went up there and I fought with myself. This part was edited way down, but I stood there for a good minute and I thought, I know that it's Paris. I know that it's the woman standing right next to me. But this is a game, and everyone is on my side. Everyone knows how to play the game. I know that we voted out the first woman because everyone is playing the game. All right, I'll play the game. I'll write down the woman that was rude to me. That way, then I get more money.
Right.
And then they said, I go back to the queue, and they said, if you would like to continue playing the game, please raise your hand. I raise my hand, and I'm looking directly at Paris, the woman that I know that it is. Well, everyone else decided that they had voted out the fake and that the game should end. And I went, no, what? She's right here. Are you? She's right. She's literally right here. And then everyone says, oh yeah, very good. He knew after. Oh yeah, he's a fake, clearly, because he didn't know that she was standing right next to him. And I went, no, actually, if you look through the entire thing, I'm watching her the entire time.
Yeah.
I know that she's the fake. I know she is the one. I know it.
With your Jubilee experiences, the stuff that does get aired versus what doesn't, do you think that there's more that should be shown?
Well, I think so. You know, I have nothing but love and respect for the people at Jubilee. They were very kind to me overall, and it really is supposed to be for entertainment.
Right. Yeah.
And so entertaining it is, absolutely. But yes, there is more on the Satanist versus mainstream religions one. That we had a very limited time. We had like a minute for all of us to discuss our point of view. And the minister that I interrupted was incredibly slow in his speech. And it would everything was, well, as a Christian, we believe. Yes, I know. Get to the point so I can talk.
Right.
Also, you know, being on the autism spectrum, which people don't really necessarily know about me, being on the autism spectrum, sometimes I have so much to say, and I need to. I'm not trying to be rude intentionally. I have a lot to say, and I need to get to my point before I forget it.
Right. Well, that's fair too, because I know that if I have something to say and I don't get to say it, sometimes I'll forget. So, hey, first off, I really appreciate you coming on today, and I hope this is not what you thought it was going to be.
Well, you know, you have been very considerate. Again, I still am concerned about what may happen with the dialogue after the show airs, but
Yeah. Again, I will make sure that whatever content I make will be verified with you before I post it. The one thing I hate about social media is commentary. I hate it because I feel like negativity fuels fire. And
I get part of my trepidation was that I get death threats every single day via email, via social media, and it comes from three different kinds of people. It comes from the bro who is angry because I'm gay and a Satanist, even though they don't believe in anything.
Mhm.
The other one comes from the Christian who wants me to find Jesus or die. And then, strangely, what has been more predominant lately is Muslims telling me that I need Allah. And I go, I don't need Allah any more than I need Jesus or that I need, no, I'm fine without your imaginary friend. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So social media is really not, I mean, it sucks because I really don't enjoy social media, but it seems like in order to get noticed, like you have to put content out,
You do.
at least with podcasting.
No, it's
right?
true. One has to put out
Right.
social media. It's a modern day, it's a malady, I think, a modern day illness.
It really is. And I have a lot of stuff. I have a show called In the Lounge where I interview artists, and I've had some that were on before that made it big before social media. And I have a lot of respect for people who've been able to do that, because nowadays there's so many bland musicians and bland artists and that are just AI generated or just following whatever's popular.
Mm-hmm.
And it's boring. The world has been so flooded with boring. It's hard to find those unique people. So, and that's why, even on shows like this, it's nice to find people like you who are very polite, very nice, that I don't get to talk to every day. So I do appreciate you coming on.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday season this month. I love October. This, fall is my favorite season. So just this month just gets me excited.
Me too. I enjoy it because I didn't get to celebrate as a kid, so I do love the idea of Halloween. Though I could do without all of the tacky decorations, and that goes for any holiday. I can't stand tacky.
We used to go all out, and now we just we don't. We take the kids trick or treating, and that's it. Like we don't hang out and decorate the house or anything like that. You don't need to decorate, though. You have a very big. I love your setup. It's beautiful.
It is. I like to tell people that I decorate an early American funeral home. So it is. Most of the things that I collect are anywhere from. I have a few 18th century things, but most things are mid to late 19th century, and then a few things that are early 20th century. But when you look at the space, it's about 1890 to about 1901, 1905.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. How did you get into that?
Well, I always loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I unlike the other children of my day, I would sit and watch PBS, and I would watch all of those, the mystery, Agatha Christie Presents, all of those things. When I was 4, I believe I was 4. One of my parents had some medical issue, and so I had to stay with one of my grandmothers. And I had little metal dollhouse furniture. And my brother, who was 2 years younger than I was, even at 2, he brought G.I. Joes and like Hot Wheels. And I brought dollhouse furniture, just the furniture, no dolls, just the furniture. And I would arrange these little Victorian pieces. And my grandmother came out on the balcony, and she saw my brother playing with his cars, and she saw me playing with dollhouse furniture. And she said, I thought you'd bring cars like your brother. And I said, oh no, just this. I love it. And she said, okay. So it was always a thing. It was always a thing for me. Also, I was always fascinated. Strangely, we couldn't watch television. He-Man and She-Ra were evil, and the Smurfs were evil. It was a satanic panic, And the one thing that I could do was I could read the New Yorker comic strips of the Addams Family, and so that informed my entire existence.
That makes sense, and I think I did hear about that on some, because I did do some research on, listen to some of the other podcasts. So a lot of the questions I asked today, I attempted to steer away from the same dialogue from the other podcasts, but I do know that you love Addams Family, so
it's being on the spectrum again. I've grown to realize adults, as an adult, people with autism, oftentimes they have one thing that is their thing.
Mhm.
And okay, Satanism, fine, whatever. I don't give a shit, really. I don't.
Right.
But the Addams Family has always been my one thing, because it helped me to understand that it was okay to be myself. It was okay to be different. It was okay to like what I liked. It was okay, and that I didn't have to fit into the white conservative Christian ideal that I grew up with.
Right. Yeah, and that's wonderful. I mean, everybody has it. For me as a kid, I loved watching Abbott and Costello.
Oh, I love them. I love Abbott and Costello.
I
When they
still
meet
have. I have.
Swanson,
Yes. Oh, yes. I have every season of theirs on DVD.
they were brilliant. Now, I love Abbott and Costello, but I actually like their predecessors, Laurel and Hardy, a little bit better.
That's fair. That's fair. I think it's just because I grew up. My grandpa was a real big Abbott and Costello fan, so that's what I kind of watched a lot of.
They were funny. I
Yeah.
have to admit, they were funny.
Well, again, I do appreciate you coming on today. How can everybody find you?
I am really easy to be found. I am the Gentleman Psychic. It's .com. I'm or Richard-Lael Lillard, and Richard-Lael is one name. Richard-Lael Lillard. Anywhere. Now, mind you, there are fakes out there who will try to get you to join the Illuminati. That's not something I will do. They will say that they will give you $1 million. I don't have $1 million, especially not to give away.
Right.
They will say things like, love, the spirits tell me you need a reading. No, I'll never contact you. And in our first conversations, I won't call anybody love. I won't.
Mhm.
It's just not my thing.
Mhm.
If I get to know you a little bit, then I might, but
Right.
not in our first conversations.
Right. And what kind of services do you offer?
Well, I do tarot readings. We do seances, guidance, all kind. Even someone to talk to. So oftentimes that's the case. That is
Mhm.
necessary.
Is that something that you can do over virtual, like
Oh yeah,
all of those things?
time. I do it all the time. COVID changed the world, and a lot of my things. It used to be that it was only in person, and now I do things even. I have clients that are in Australia and in New Amsterdam or New Amsterdam, wherever.
Yeah.
Anyway, Amsterdam.
Yeah.
All over the world. I have clients
Yeah.
all over the world.
Have you found difficulties doing them virtually?
No, not at all. It's actually easier because then I don't have to sit for an hour and a half after and before,
Right.
talking and having tea, and
Right.
I can go with my shoes off.
Yeah. I mean, really, what only matters is from here up.
I'm naked. I'm naked now. You have
Oh,
no
okay.
idea. So I'm not standing.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, and I will definitely put your website in the description. And again, any content that I want to put out there, I will make sure to verify with you. And I hope to stay in touch with you. And you've been a wonderful guest.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And to everybody that's watched or listened, we'll see you next time.